All right, let's not pretend this is just another routine political back and forth, because it's not. This immigration debate, it's hitting something deeper. You can feel it. And the way both sides are responding is honestly revealing more than they probably intended. So let's start with what actually kicked this off. You've got Angus Taylor stepping forward with what's being framed as the early stages of the Coalition's immigration policy. And look, call it what you want. A starting point, a framework, whatever. But at least it's something concrete. He's not dancing around the issue. He's saying clearly that immigration numbers are too high and the quality isn't where it should be.
Angus Taylor made a good start towards the Coalition's immigration policy, but it was just a start. Beyond his existing mantra that the numbers are too high and that the quality is too low, he was absolutely right to stress that immigration must be for Australia's benefit, not just migrants, and that too many recent migrants are coming here to change us, not join us.
Immigration numbers are too high, and consequently Australians can see the country they love changing for the worse. Not everyone wanting to migrate to Australia will be a net benefit to Australia. Indeed, some will be a net drain. But for an immigration program to work in the national interest, it must discriminate based on values.
And Labor knows, don't they, that he's on to something, that he's scratching deep at an issue that a lot of Australians care about, because their incoherent and contradictory response came out today. I mean, federally, Tony Burke implicitly accepted Taylor's line, saying that, well, Labor's...
Before we continue, do us a little favour by subscribing to the channel, because over 98% of you watching haven't subscribed. It costs you nothing, not even a penny, to join this channel. Have you subscribed? Thanks so much.
Now, whether you agree with that or not, here's the key thing. He's putting a stake in the ground. He's saying immigration should serve Australia first, not just be about intake numbers, not just about looking good internationally, but about actual national benefit. And that's where things start to get uncomfortable for the other side. Because the moment you frame immigration like that, around national interest, around cultural fit, around long-term impact, you force a real conversation. Not a slogan, not a talking point, a real conversation. And that's exactly the kind of conversation a lot of politicians would rather avoid. But here's the twist. What really made this whole situation blow up wasn't just what Taylor said, it was how Labor responded. Or more accurately, how they didn't respond coherently.
Well, Labor's already doing it. We're getting the numbers down and we're getting the quality up, said Burke.
We've been getting the numbers down. My simple message to anyone who thinks, what do you do when your visa runs out? You should leave.
That's interesting. But then we had the Victorian Premier Jacinta Allan claiming that Taylor's plan was extreme, it was race-based, and it was channeling Donald Trump.
I'm firmly of the view that we need unity, not division. I'm firmly of the view that we need a migration policy that is not race-based or extreme, dividing and excluding families by race, religion or country of origin. That is not what the Anzac stood for. We are a country that doesn't need to go down a path like what we are seeing in Donald Trump's America, where people are angry and divided and living standards are falling.
They tried the Trump card with Dutton. I don't think it's going to work twice. So where did this leave Burke? Because Burke was channeling Angus Taylor. You heard his grab. Is he now like Trump as well?
You've got Tony Burke coming out, and in a strange way, almost agreeing with the premise. He's talking about bringing numbers down, lifting quality, tightening things up, even going as far as saying if your visa expires, you should leave. Straightforward, no nonsense. And you're sitting there thinking, wait a minute, isn't that basically echoing what Taylor is saying? But then, almost immediately, you get a completely different tone from Jacinta Allan, who jumps in and labels the Coalition's direction as extreme, divisive, even comparing it to Donald Trump-style politics. And this is where it starts to fall apart. Because you can't have it both ways. You can't quietly adopt the substance of a policy while loudly condemning its tone. People notice that. It creates this weird political contradiction where one side is simultaneously agreeing and attacking at the same time. And honestly, that's why critics are calling it incoherent. Because it is. Now, let's go deeper, because this isn't just about political point scoring. This is about something that a lot of Australians genuinely feel, but don't always see addressed properly.
There's a growing sense that immigration isn't being managed with enough focus on integration and long-term cohesion, that it's become too much about numbers and not enough about outcomes. And when Taylor talks about migrants needing to join Australia rather than change Australia, that hits a nerve. It's a strong statement, no doubt. Some people will hear that and immediately push back, but others, they'll hear it and think, finally, someone's saying it out loud. And that's why this debate matters. Because at its core, it's not just about how many people come into the country, it's about what kind of country Australia becomes as a result. It's about shared values, social cohesion, and whether immigration is strengthening or straining the system. Now, here's where things get tricky, and where the conversation often gets derailed. When you start talking about values, about integration, about cultural alignment, it quickly becomes sensitive territory. People worry about discrimination, about fairness, about going too far. And those concerns are valid. They shouldn't just be brushed aside.
But avoiding the topic altogether? That doesn't solve anything either. Because the reality is, not every migrant experience is the same. Some people integrate seamlessly, contribute massively, and become part of the national fabric almost instantly. Others struggle. And a small minority? They bring values or ideologies that clash with the society they're entering. Ignoring that complexity doesn't make it go away. And this is where the practical challenges really kick in. It's easy to say immigration should be based on values, but how do you actually measure that? How do you screen for it? How do you enforce it without crossing into unfair or unworkable territory? You can't just scroll through someone's social media and call it a day. People can hide things, delete things, present themselves in a certain way during the application process. And by the time issues surface, they're often already settled, married, working, raising families. At that point, enforcement becomes incredibly complicated. And that's the part politicians don't always spell out, because it's messy. There's no clean solution, no perfect system. But that doesn't mean the concern itself isn't real. Then there's the numbers game, which might actually be the biggest pressure point of all. Because even if you get the policy right on paper, even if you nail the balance between skills, values and integration, you still have to decide how many people the country can realistically absorb. And right now, that's where things feel stretched. Housing is tight, infrastructure is under pressure, public services are feeling the strain. And when immigration numbers are high, those pressures become more visible, more immediate. So when people say numbers need to come down, it's not always coming from a place of hostility. It's often coming from a place of practicality. But here's the catch. Reducing numbers isn't as simple as it sounds. A huge portion of migration flows through international students. And let's be honest, a lot of those students aren't just coming for education. They're coming as a pathway to work and residency. That's just the reality of how the system operates. Cut that pipeline too aggressively, and you hit universities, businesses, entire sectors that rely on that flow of people. Then you've got industries, farms, hospitality, healthcare, that already struggle to find local workers. If you reduce migration without a plan to fill those gaps, you create a different kind of problem.
So again, we're back to complexity. And this is where I'll be blunt. Having a strong principle is one thing. Turning it into a workable policy is something else entirely. That's the challenge for the coalition right now. They've tapped into a real concern. They've articulated a clear direction. But they still need to show how it actually plays out in practice. Because people remember past promises. They remember when numbers were supposed to come down and didn't. They remember when policies sounded tough, but delivered very little change. So this time, voters are going to want specifics, real numbers, clear targets, not just direction, but delivery. And until that happens, there's going to be a level of scepticism, fair or not. But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture here. What we're seeing isn't just a policy debate, it's a shift in tone, a shift in what's considered acceptable to talk about openly. Immigration used to be handled with a kind of cautious language, carefully avoiding anything that might spark controversy. That's changing. Now, the conversation is more direct, more blunt, and yes, sometimes more divisive, but also, in some ways, more honest. And whether you see that as a good thing or a dangerous path probably depends on where you stand. So here's the real question. Are we finally having the conversation that needed to happen? Or are we heading into a space where the rhetoric starts to outpace the reality? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this one isn't black and white. There are real concerns, real trade-offs, and no easy answers. And if you want more breakdowns like this, where we actually dig into the substance instead of just skimming headlines, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and stick around.